Sie machen den Rebbe rasch. Ei, 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 ei. Hey!
Talmidim, L'chaim Chassidim. Tonight, tomorrow, we celebrate the birthday of our grandmother, the Rebbe's mother, the Rebbe Tzimchana, L'chaim. In the year 1880, the Rebbe Tzimchana was born. If we look in Ayom Yom, the Rebbe writes a little bit of the history of his mother. The Rebbe writes, "Rabbanis Hatzidkanis Marischana, Neilde b'yom Chavches Teves Hei Tafrei Shmem." She was born on the 28th day of Teves in the year 1880, Be'ir Ramanovka. Tonight and tomorrow, as we celebrate the Rebbe Tzimchana's birthday, first and foremost, we have to realize we are not celebrating the birthday of the Rebbe's mother, as if it's to say it's the Rebbe's mother and we as Chassidim are participating in the Rebbe's mother's birthday. That's true. But in a sense, if as Chassidim we consider ourselves the children of the Rebbe himself, then by extension the Rebbe's mother is our grandmother. And therefore on a day like Chavches Teves, we are actually celebrating unser Babbe, our grandmother. And as such, as Chassidim, it is our opportunity to show thanks and appreciation for what the Rebbe's mother has given to us. The Rebbe was born, as we know, in Tafrei Samach Beis 1902, in a city called Nikolaev in the Ukraine, which I had the good fortune to visit on a number of occasions. When you go and you see the home where the Rebbe was born, in a very humble abode, in a relatively simple looking building, it was not a hospital, at home. And as the pasuk says regarding Moshe Rabbeinu, that the home, Nismalei Abayis Kulei Eira, that the home immediately was filled with light. When you look at that home, and that bedroom where the Rebbe was born, and you realize that the world was never again the same, and that everything changed from here on further, until whatever happened until 1902 is different than from whatever happened from 1902 and further until our very own day. Because as a result of that day, of the gift that the Rebbe Tzimchana brought into this world, the neshama of the Rebbe, the world indeed has changed. Nikolaev is a city which had many, many thousands of Yidden. In fact, many of famous Lubavitcher Nigunim originate and were composed in the city of Nikolaev. The Sefer HaTanya was edited in Nikolaev, as you can read when you look at the Akdama of Tanya. Nikolaev was a beautiful city that pulsated with the life of Chassidim and Chassidishkeit. And the Rav was the Rebbe Tzimchana's father, the Meir Shleima Alevi Yanofsky. When you go to the city, you are fortunate to see some of the amazing parts of the city which still survive till this very day. When you walk down the street and you see the famous aptek, the pharmacy, where the Rebbe and his mother hid when he was a child, to save mothers and children from a pogrom, Rachmana litzlan. When you go around the city and you see the two shuls of the Lubavitch community, which existed until communism and continues until this very day to be the Chabad house, and you see next door the cheder, where the Rebbe went to cheder. A cheder which, ever since, as the Rebbe testifies upon himself, that from the day that he went to cheder, he began to imagine the pain and the suffering of Am Yisrael for 3,000 years past, and looking forward to a future, imagining a world of happiness and celebration with the coming of Mashiach. That cheder still stands till this very day. And as you climb the steps of that cheder, which are not that easy to climb, you have to be careful. Nevertheless, as you climb the steps, and you finally make it to the room where the Rebbe went to cheder, you can't help but feel that you're standing in a place where history changed. The world changed. It's the place where the Rebbe himself began to predict and to formulate a plan of bringing about the Hisgalus of Melech HaMashiach. And you go around the corner and you see the home where the Rebbe's bris was on Chalamei Pesach, in the home of his grandparents, which I had the good fortune, Baruch Hashem, to see. And you see the city of Nikolaev, and you see the door where the Rebbe's mother's mother was killed. You begin to have a taste, just a little taste, of what life was like for the Rebbe Tzimchana, for the Mesiris Nefesh that she had to go through to make sure that her family and that her children, and ultimately all of us, are benefiting from until this very day. You travel a few hours away by car and you end up in the city of Dnepropetrovsk, the city where after the Rebbe's two brothers, Rabbi Yisrael Aryeh Leib and his brother Betel, who was never killed by the Nazis, and actually his burial place is right outside of Dnepropetrovsk in a little village called Igren, at a Kever Achim. Once again you see and you feel the pain and the hardships that the Rebbe Tzimchana went through as a young woman, raising her children in difficult times and in dangerous times, but always with Mesiris Nefesh and resilience, making sure that Am Yisrael will have the leader that it needs for the future years to come. So the life of the Rebbe Tzimchana, in short, was not always easy. Our grandmother's life was not always easy. But today is her birthday. And the Gemara says, Mazali Geiver, as the Rebbe often quotes, that on the day of her birthday, a person's mazel shines strong. If today is the day of the birthday of the Rebbe Tzimchana, it behooves us to sit together, to verbring, to inspire ourselves about the things that the Rebbe Tzimchana would like us to remember and to continue to do in her memory and on her behalf. In a Yoman that the Rebbe Tzimchana wrote, which recently was published, she wrote a Yoman in Yiddish. For those that read Yiddish, it has a special taste, because you feel the experience, the pains, the difficulties, the moments of celebration, which were not many, in the Rebbetzon's life. On Hey Tammuz, Tafshin Tez Zayin, June 14, 1956, the Rebbetzon writes, Es is geworden 9 Jahre sind ich bin gekommen daher. It's already 9 years since I came here to the United States. I thank Hashem for my son. He has accomplished and achieved so much in these last years. He has amazing, extraordinary keiches, ge'enes, and ability. In addition to that, he has a holy neshama, which everything that he does is done betachlis ha'emes. And the world recognizes this and appreciates it. The devotion that Rebbetzin writes of the young generation to my son, they haben im pashat lib, They simply love him. Und a Beziehung zu ihm wie zu a göttlichen Mensch. And they treat him as if to a godly person. Ich seh das als, versteh das und schätz. I see this all, says the Rebbe Tzimchana. I understand it and I appreciate it. And then the Rebbe Tzimchana says some very potent words. Der Sohn soll gesund sein, ken sagen ani tevlach mi asara banim. My son, may he be well, can say, I am better for you than 10 sons. A reference to a famous haftarah. When I was growing up in Crown Heights, when I was a bacher, I remember the Rebbe saying the haftarah of Rosh Hashanah, haftarah Schana. It's fair to say that that haftarah was one of the most emotional moments of the year. Because if you paid attention, you knew that in that haftarah the Rebbe is going to cry. Oftentimes the Rebbe controlled his voice, but sometimes he would just let go. And in that haftarah, Chana cries, and her husband says to her, why are you crying? You have no children. Am I not better for you than 10 children? And here the Rebbe Tzimchana says, my son, the Rebbe can say, Ani tevlach mi asara banim. I am better to you, ma, than 10 children. Remember the Rebbe Tzimchana, unfortunately, when she came to New York, one son was lost by the Nazis, Yimach Shman. Second son, a few years later, passed away in England, and as the Rebbe requested, his tzion is in Sfas in Eretz Yisrael. The only one she had left in her life was not her husband and not her children. Only one son, her oldest son. But Eim Hamalchus, not just a son, but the son, the leader of Am Yisrael, of Klal Yisrael, and by extension of the entire world. And here the Rebbetzin shares how meaningful it is to her. Shein 12 Jahre allein. It's been 12 years since I'm alone, since she lost her husband, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. I thank God for the good was is da, but I thank Hashem for the good that we do have. Der Anhalt is der Zunschlitter. What keeps me going is my son, may he live and be well. The Rebbetzin celebrates and appreciates the gift that the Eibishter gave her, to be the mother of royalty, Ema Malchus, to give birth to the neshama that takes care of Klal Yisrael Ad Hayom Hazeh and will bring us to the Gula HaMitis Vashlema. In 1947, the Rebbetzin was in Paris. She escaped, thank God, miraculously, Russia, and she arrived without any members of her family, alone, to Paris, France. The Rebbe flew by airplane, stayed for 3 months, approximately, and then sailed back to the United States with his mother, where she began the 17 best years of her life. Years of royalty. Years where the Rebbetzin was able to shep the nachas, to see how the world appreciates what her son, the Rebbe, is doing for Am Yisrael. The Rebbe's trip to Paris is well documented, including the most special days of going to receive his mother, who he hasn't seen in nearly 20 years, and bringing her back to New York. We realize just a little bit of what the Rebbe Tzimchana went through, and what the Rebbe meant to the Rebbe Tzimchana, and by extension what it means to us until this very day. We are all familiar with the famous haftarah. The haftarah tells us, Kel Barama Nishma, Rachel Imenu cries, why is she buried alone on the side of the road? And the Eibishter answers her, Mini Kelech mi bechi, Mama Rachel, you don't have to cry, because there is reward to come for what you have done. V'shavu vanim legvulam. A promise was made to Rachel Imenu. that her children will come back to the land of Eretz Yisrael. It's fair to say that the Rebbetzin Chana has given no less than Rachel Imenu. And as the Rebbetzin Chana says in the Haftarah of Chana, El anar hazeh ispalolti, I cried and I begged and I davened for this child. A reference to Shmuel, and in our case, a reference to Chana, the Rebbetzin Chana davening for her son. And the promise is made by the Eibishter to the mother of royalty. Your tears are being answered. V'shavu vanim l'gvulam. On the day like Chavches Teves, when we celebrate and we observe the Yom Yiledis of Eim HaMalchus, we realize it's a Yom Zakai. It's a special day. It's a holy day. It's a day that we can ask Hashem to give us all of the things that we need, and most importantly, the things that the Rebbe wants to bring about the Hiskalus of Mashiach in our very own days. A number of years ago, I was at a Farbrengen Milava Malka, which the Tzetzoyim of the Alter Rebbe celebrate every year. A man who lives in Borough Park today, he's known as the Gedlitzer Rebbe, spoke, and he shared the following story, a story which is fascinating. He said he lived on Montgomery Street in Crown Heights. His parents were Holocaust survivors. They had a large family. Upstairs was the family home. On the first floor on Montgomery Street was a shul, and downstairs in the basement was the washing machine and dryer. She was a mother of more than 10 children, and every day she would carry the laundry from the upstairs down to the basement and clean it and so on. On Shabbos she had to prepare the shul. Her husband was the Rav, and she simply had no more koyach to do so. Mrs. Jungreis, the mother of the Gedlitzer Rebbe, went to Rebbe for Yechidus. And she cried and she said to the Rebbe, she can't take it anymore, she needs help. She can't do this by herself. And she explained that her husband doesn't want her to hire a maid, because a maid is not Jewish. And for tznius, her husband doesn't want it. So the Rebbe said to the Gedlitzer Rebbe's mother, if that's the case, so what's the problem? You go outside and you take a guy. Doesn't have to be dafka a female, it can be a male. She came home that night and she was very excited. The Rebbe said, you can take a non-Jew. But she doesn't have the money to pay for it. She doesn't have anybody that she can go to. She doesn't even speak a decent English. She woke up in the morning on Montgomery Street and she sees a non-Jew walking down Brooklyn Avenue. She walks over to the non-Jew. She introduces herself. His name is James. And she tries to explain to James that she needs some help at home. He didn't understand all of her words, but he understood enough and he followed her into her home. She showed James the upstairs floor where the family lives that has to be cleaned every day, the washing machine and the dryer in the basement, the shul tables that have to be cleaned, and so on and so forth. James turns to her and says, listen. He said, I live with my mother, he said, on Lincoln Place, not far from 770. I don't need any money. I am willing to come work in your house every day for free. All I'm asking for is, as he said, a bottle of booze. A butel mashke. He's not a yid. He's willing to work for free. He wants once a week a bottle of schnapps. He says he remembers growing up, Thursdays and Fridays, they were always joking, "No, do we have the bottle of booze ready for James?" Eventually, many people, unfortunately at the time, left Crown Heights. Many of them went to Borough Park. So did his family. And James would continue to take a city bus at his own expense from Crown Heights to Borough Park on a daily basis for free. All you had to give him was on Friday his bottle of booze. For 33 years, James worked for this family for free because this Jewish woman had the simple emunah that when you go to the Rebbe in Yechidus and the Rebbe says few words, what's the problem? Geht men alois in gas, umenem tagoy. If you can't take a non-Jewish woman, then go outside and take a non-Jewish guy. 33 years the Rebbe gave this family, long enough for all of the children to grow up, for him to take care of the house for many years, until he died. And as they said when he told the story, the Maral of Prague made a Gelam lasted for a relatively short period of time. The Rebbe Bashafan Gelam, 33 years. When we realize just a glimpse of whatever that we have today, and whatever Kahal Adas Chsidei Lubavitch have today, and by extension whatever the world has today, it is all thanks, as Rabbi Akiva said, Shali v'shalachem shalahu. Whatever we have, what you have, and what I have belongs to her. Today, on the Yom Hiladis of Rebbe Tzimchana, of our grandmother, it's fair to say, Shali v'shalachem shalahu. Whatever we have is a thank you to our grandmother. I recently heard from my aunt, Leah Khan, the following story. The Rebbe Tzimchana unfortunately passed away Vav Tishrei, Tafshin Chafei. It was a Shabbos afternoon. When the Rebbetzin arrived to the hospital, unfortunately the istalkus took place not much afterwards. Leah was standing near the ambulance when they took the Rebbetzin Chana from 1418 President Street, where she lived, to the hospital. The Rebbe was there, and the Rebbe asked Leah if it would be okay with her to please join the Rebbetzin Chana in the ambulance. And they went to the hospital. The Rebbe was there, Leah was there, and then unfortunately the bad news came that the istalkus took place. Now imagine the scene. The Rebbe would go visit his mother daily. He loved her. The horrible news is being told to him now that the Rebbe Tzimchana passed away. To the Rebbe's side is standing Leah. And the door opens up from the hospital room, and the nurse begins to wheel out the oxygen tank. Leah was so concerned for the well-being of Rebbe Tzimchana, she didn't realize why the nurse is taking the oxygen tank out. So she starts screaming at her, "Bring it back. She may need it." The nurse didn't say anything. She realized that Leah doesn't realize what is going on here. So she didn't say anything. And Leah continues to scream, "Please bring it back. She may need it." And the nurse insists on continuing to push the oxygen tank out of the room. The Rebbe just learned that he lost his mother. And the Rebbe said in Yiddish the following words: "Es zetois as Leah weiß nicht, darf men ihr nicht erzählen." It seems like Leah doesn't know. There's no need to tell her. What was on the Rebbe's mind at the moment of the deepest pain? That Leah shouldn't have to suffer hearing bad news. After all, how long would it take for Leah to find out what happened? But that's not the point. In the Rebbe's world, in the Rebbe Tzimchana's world, if even for a moment you can spare a Yid pain, suffering, aggravation, on a day like Chavches Teves, when we, her grandchildren, around the world, celebrate and realize and recognize the amazing matana that the Eibishter gave us of the Rebbetzin Chana. As her kapitel starts today, kapitel Kuf Lamed Vav, Heidu la Hashem ki tev ki la'elam chastei. We thank Hashem for whatever we have. And as the kapitel finishes, Vayifrekeinu mitzareinu ki la'elam chastei. The Eibishter takes us out of our troubles, ki la'elam chastei. Nesim lacham l'chal basar ki la'elam chastei. Heidu l'keil hashamayim ki la'elam chastei. We realize and recognize that 4,000 Chabad houses around the world, including the Chabad houses that we just saw in Paris, that inspire Jews in difficult moments of pain, are all the extension of the work of our grandmother, the Rebbetzin Chana. So l'chaim, and we realize and recognize what kind of schus we have. As the pasuk says, Habitu el tzur chutzavtem. Look to the rock of where you were carved from. We need to realize that Chassidim, the schus, the ashreinu matev chalkeinu, the mother and the grandmother that we have, the Rebbe that we have, to appreciate it, to enjoy it, and to celebrate it. Because after all, we're family. And if family doesn't care, then who does? So as we celebrate tonight and tomorrow, Chavches Teves, the birthday of our Baba, of our grandmother, allow me to conclude with words that the Rebbetzin writes in her Yoman. She wrote it on the third day of Chalameid Sukkos in the year Tavshin Yudches, the end of 1957. Ich heil verschreiben dem Vergnügen, was ich am Nächten gehad. I am rushing to write down and tell you the pleasure that I had yesterday. Ich hab sich persönlich demos vergessen. Actually, I enjoyed it so much, says the Rebbetzin, that I forgot about myself. Es ist gewesen, als wie alle Jahr Simchas Beis HaSheyeva. It was like all the years of Simchas Beis HaSheyeva. They brought children from Mesilas Shabbos and Beis Rivka. Together with them came Asach from the Elton and many of the parents. Es ist gewesen a größer Reilam, there was a large crowd. Das Reiv Kinder, most of them were children. Nach der Kartine von Lag Beimer seien sie erreist auf dem Gas. Later the children all went out to the street. Und dort ist der Sohn soll gesund sein, herausgegangen zu sein. And there my son soll gesund sein, the Rebbe, went out to the children. Übergeben die Liebe, to tell you of the love, was is geworden auf seine Peneme, which became obvious on the faces of these children. Kann ich nicht, I just can't do it. Und das hat sich herausgegossen in Simcha und intens mit Grace Slavs. This came out to expression with Simcha, with happiness, with dance, and with great enthusiasm. Bei Kindern ist doch das mit Azah, Emes und Reinkeit. By children, things come out with such a truth, a purity, as es wirkt, weist man reis auf die Ältere. And it affects the elders as well. As the Shemer via Mesles, it is already more than 24 hours. Fundamelt. Und ich feel das noch jetzt. And I still feel it till this very moment. The Rebbetzin Chana tells of the joy, of the happiness, of seeing children, as she says, express the love to her son, to our Rebbe. So l'chaim, let us do the same. Let us show our Rebbe, and let us show our Baba, our grandmother, on her 135th birthday. Baba, we didn't forget you. Baba, we love you. It's your day. Let us celebrate it. Let us realize the power of today's day. Because on the day of Yom Yoledis, we can ask and achieve by HaKadosh Baruch Hu everything that we need. So as the Rebbe concludes his own Basi Lagani, which we will celebrate in just 2 weeks of Yud Shvat. The dream of the Rebbe is we should see a world of Dira B'Tachteinin, without pain, without suffering. A world of happiness and joy and celebration. Together with the Rebbe and his parents, our Baba and our Zayda, v'niskezan sich mit den Rebbe d'Olamato v'hu yigalenu l'chaim.